Have you ever entered a room and felt the weight of every eye upon you? Not because of arrogance, not because of wealth, but because of something deeper, a presence, a quiet force that commands respect without a single word. There are men who walk through life unnoticed, their voices drowned in the sea of mediocrity. And then, there are those whose very existence demands attention. Not through force, not through loud words or empty displays, but through something unseen, something powerful. What is it? Some call it aura, some call it dominance. The ancient Stoics called it virtue, the invisible gravity that bends the world around those who master it. Most will never know its secrets. Most will spend their lives trying to buy respect, beg for it, or fight for it, only to watch it slip through their fingers. But those who understand the ancient principles that govern respect, they do not chase it. They do not ask for it. It is simply given to them. Today, I will share with you 6 secrets, timeless, unshakable truths that turn an ordinary man into a force of nature. These are not tips, tricks, or cheap tactics. They are fundamental laws that govern human nature, just as they govern the lives of the greatest men who ever lived. The Stoics knew them. The warriors of old lived by them. And if you listen carefully, if you truly understand them, the world will see you differently. Forever. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge. And leave a comment below and share your opinion on these secrets, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Secret 1. The silence that speaks louder than words. There is a kind of man who does not fill the air with unnecessary words. He does not rush to prove himself. He does not break the silence just to be heard. Yet when he speaks, the world listens. His presence is felt before his voice is ever needed. This is the power of restraint, the power of a man who has mastered himself. Most men fear silence. They drown in the need for validation, filling every moment with explanations, justifications, and empty noise. But the man who understands the power of silence bends the world to his will without lifting a finger. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Words are like currency. Spend them too freely, and they lose their value. The moment you stop handing out your thoughts carelessly, the moment you stop explaining yourself to those who don't deserve it, you become something more. You become an enigma. And nothing commands respect like a man whose thoughts are his own. The ancient warriors understood this. A true leader never speaks when unnecessary, never explains when explanation is not required. A lion does not tell the jungle, it is a lion. It simply is. In battle, the most feared warrior was not the one who shouted threats, not the one who bragged of his victories. No, the most feared warrior was the one who stood in silence, unmoved, unwavering, unreadable. Why? Because the unknown breeds power. When people cannot predict you, they respect you. When people cannot control you with words, they fear you. When people do not know what you are thinking, they listen carefully to every word you choose to speak. The average man leaks his thoughts into the world. He over-explains, he justifies, he tries to convince others of his worth. The wise man knows that true power comes from keeping the world guessing, and in that mystery, he becomes untouchable. A Roman general once stood before his army on the eve of battle. His men asked him, "What will you say to the enemy?" He did not answer. Instead, he walked to the edge of the camp, looked into the darkness of the battlefield ahead, and simply stood there, watching, thinking. Minutes passed, then an hour. Not a single word left his lips. The soldiers, once restless, fell silent. A strange energy filled the air. Without speaking a single command, without raising his voice, he had set the tone for the battle to come. He had taught his men a lesson without saying a word. Let the weak waste their breath. Let the strong speak only when necessary. Seneca, the great Stoic, warned against those who talk too much. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. He understood that the man who speaks too soon, who reacts too quickly, is a man controlled by the world. But the man who waits, the man who lets the world reveal itself before he moves, he is always in control. This does not mean you should be silent at all times. It does not mean you should refuse to speak when leadership is needed. But it does mean you must choose your words like a warrior chooses his strikes, carefully, intentionally, with precision. A king does not lower himself to argue with fools. A warrior does not explain himself to those who do not understand strength. And a wise man does not waste his breath proving his worth. There is power in knowing when to be silent. There is power in allowing others to wonder. There is power in becoming the man whose presence alone demands respect. When you master this, the world will not see you as just another voice in the crowd. It will see you as something more, something greater, something to be respected. And now, we move deeper. Secret 2. The unbreakable frame of a man who cannot be shaken. There exists a rare kind of man who does not flinch in the face of pressure. He does not break when insulted, does not crumble when challenged, and does not react when provoked. He moves through life like a mountain, steady, unmoved, unshaken. No force, no words, no situation can pull him out of his frame. This is the mark of a man who commands respect. Most men are like leaves in the wind, easily swayed, easily provoked, easily led. They react to every insult, every disagreement, every shift in the mood of those around them. Their emotions rule them, their impulses betray them, and their need to be liked makes them weak. But the man who understands the power of an unshakable frame becomes something different. He becomes the kind of man others look to when chaos unfolds. He becomes the anchor in a world full of weak men who crumble under pressure. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a state of absolute inner peace, where nothing external can disturb the mind of the man who has mastered himself. Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, understood this deeply. He taught that the only true power a man has is the power over his own mind. Everything else, fortune, reputation, even his own body, could be taken from him. But his ability to remain unmoved, that was his true source of strength. A man who has built an unshakable frame understands one thing. He is the master of his own reactions. No one can make him angry without his permission. No one can make him feel insecure unless he allows it. No one can force him to react in a way that does not serve his power. Imagine two men standing in a storm. One is panicking, his emotions wild, his fear overtaking him. The other stands still, his eyes locked forward, his body strong against the wind. One is ruled by the storm, the other has become the storm. This is the difference between a weak man and a man with an unshakable frame. There will always be those who try to test you. The world is filled with people who live off the reactions of others. They poke, they provoke, they seek to break the composure of those around them. Why? Because if they can pull you into their chaos, they gain power over you. But when a man refuses to react, when a man meets provocation with calm, when a man remains steady no matter what is thrown at him, the world begins to respect him. People fear what they cannot control. They fear a man whose emotions do not sway with the winds of the moment. A warrior standing before his enemy does not tremble. A king on his throne does not rise for every fool who shouts his name. A true man, a man of power, does not lower himself to react to every slight, every insult, every challenge. He simply stands, and in that stillness, in that unshakable presence, the world bends to him. Marcus Aurelius, the last great emperor of Rome, understood this better than most. He ruled during times of war, betrayal, and chaos, yet never once did he allow the world to shake him. His philosophy was simple. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. A man with an unshakable frame is not cold, nor is he emotionless. He simply understands that emotions are a weapon best used with control. He does not allow the world to dictate his inner state. He dictates it himself. When insulted, he does not react. When challenged, he does not flinch. When tested, he does not fall into the trap of proving himself. And this is why he is respected. Most men will live their entire lives as slaves to their emotions. But those who master the art of remaining unshaken, those who walk through life with the stillness of a warrior and the presence of a king, they will be the ones the world follows. And now we go even deeper. Secret 3. The man who owns himself cannot be controlled. There's a kind of man who walks through life untouched by the invisible chains that bind others. He does not seek approval, nor does he fear disapproval. He does not follow trends, nor does he rebel against them for the sake of rebellion. He does not need permission to be who he is. He simply is. This man is truly free. And because he is free, he is respected. Most men spend their lives trapped in cages they cannot see. They live for the opinions of others, for the approval of friends, for the validation of strangers. They adjust their words, their actions, their very personalities based on what they believe will make them more liked, more accepted, more admired. But in doing so, they become prisoners. A man who needs something from others is a man who can be controlled. If he needs their approval, he will obey them. If he fears their judgment, he will silence himself. If he depends on their validation, he will shape himself to fit their expectations. He is no longer his own master. But the man who owns himself, who does not seek permission to exist as he is, becomes something else entirely. He becomes untouchable. He becomes dangerous. Seneca wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." The world cannot manipulate a man who has no need to be accepted. He does not change his course based on what others think. He does not crave their applause or fear their criticism. He is indifferent to both, and in that indifference, he becomes the one that others look up to. This does not mean he is isolated. It does not mean he is arrogant. It means he moves through the world with a quiet, unshakable certainty in who he is. He does not announce himself. He does not seek attention. And yet, attention follows him, because people are drawn to the rarest thing of all, a man who is truly free. The Spartans understood this. They did not speak more than necessary. They did not seek approval from Athens or Rome. They did not decorate themselves with luxuries to impress the world. They lived by their own laws, walked their own path, and followed no one. And because of this, they were feared and respected across all of Greece. True respect is not given to the man who conforms. It is not given to the man who tries to be liked. It is given to the man who walks his own path without hesitation, without apology, without need. A slave begs for approval. A king does not. And that is the difference. A man who owns himself is a man who does not betray himself to please others. He does not suppress his thoughts because they might offend. He does not say what people want to hear just to be accepted. He does not trade his authenticity for social comfort. And because he does not bend, the world takes him seriously. This kind of man has presence. When he walks into a room, people can feel it. Not because he is loud, not because he demands attention, but because he carries something that others lack: sovereignty, the quiet, invisible power of a man who bows to no one. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful emperors in history, wrote to himself every night, reminding himself to remain unmoved by flattery and immune to criticism. He understood that the opinions of others are fleeting, that they shift like the wind, and that a man who chases them will never know peace. He knew that true power comes not from ruling over others, but from ruling over oneself. This is why the man who owns himself is respected, because he is rare, because he is untouchable, because the world cannot control him. And now we go even deeper. Secret 4. The man who walks alone walks ahead of the crowd. There is a road that few men will ever take. It is a road that leads away from comfort, away from the safety of the herd, away from the noise of the world. It is a path walked only by those who understand a truth that most fear to accept. Greatness demands solitude. The man who walks alone is not lonely. He is not lost. He is not weak. He is simply different. And because he is different, he is respected. Most men are terrified of standing alone. They surround themselves with people not out of true connection, but out of fear. Fear of silence, fear of their own thoughts, fear of being left behind. They conform to the group, not because they truly believe in it, but because they are too afraid to stand apart. But the man who is willing to walk alone, who is willing to carve his own path, who does not need the approval or company of others to validate his existence, this man is unstoppable. The greatest minds in history understood this. Marcus Aurelius, though he ruled over millions, spent his nights alone with his thoughts, writing to himself, reminding himself that a leader must be able to stand alone in his convictions. Seneca warned that most people are lost, and to follow them blindly is to ensure your own downfall. And Epictetus, a former slave who rose to become one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, taught that a man must first learn to stand alone before he can ever stand among others as an equal. This does not mean isolation for the sake of isolation. It does not mean rejecting all human connection. It means that a man must first become whole within himself. He must be comfortable in his own mind. He must trust his own thoughts. He must be able to walk a road that no one else dares to take, because that road leads somewhere different. Look at the masses. They move together, they think together, they fall together. They believe what they are told to believe. They do what they are expected to do. They seek what everyone else seeks, and in doing so, they remain average. But the man who steps away from the crowd, who dares to question, who dares to seek something greater, who dares to walk alone, even when the path is uncertain, this man becomes something else. This man becomes a leader. A wolf does not follow sheep. A lion does not fear standing alone in the wild. A man who knows his own strength does not need the validation of the weak, and because of this, he is respected. The world will try to pull you back. The moment you begin to separate yourself, the moment you start thinking differently, moving differently, acting differently, the crowd will resist. They will question you. They will try to pull you back into their ways. Why? Because your independence reminds them of their own weakness. A man who dares to walk alone forces others to confront their own fears. They see in him what they lack: courage, self-reliance, a mind unchained by the expectations of others. And because they cannot be him, they try to break him. But they fail. Because the man who walks alone does not fear their opinions. He does not need their approval. He does not seek their understanding. He is already moving forward, already climbing higher, already becoming something they cannot comprehend. This is why he is respected, not because he asks for it, not because he forces it, but because he is different. Because he is willing to stand where others will not, because he is willing to walk alone while others wait for permission. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades, when the weak have fallen and the masses have disappeared, he is the only one left standing, far ahead, above the rest. And now we go deeper. Secret 5. The man who controls his desires controls his destiny. There is a battle that every man must face. A battle not against the world, not against his enemies, but against himself. The strongest men in history did not conquer nations before they first conquered their own impulses. The warriors, the kings, the philosophers who commanded respect all understood one thing. A man who is ruled by his desires is a man who is easily controlled. Most men do not control their desires. Their desires control them. They chase pleasure, chase approval, chase comfort, chase anything that gives them a brief escape from the weight of existence. They are addicted to food, to entertainment, to distraction, to women, to anything that numbs them from the discipline they lack. And because they are slaves to their impulses, they are weak. They are predictable. They can be led, manipulated, and discarded. But the man who controls his desires, he is different. This man is dangerous. He does not eat for indulgence. He eats for fuel. He does not seek pleasure without purpose. He seeks mastery. He does not waste time in distraction. He sharpens his mind like a blade. He does not chase women. He builds himself into the kind of man women chase. And because he is in control, no one else can control him. Epictetus, once a slave, understood this deeply. He wrote, "Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desires, but by eliminating them." The moment you stop needing, the moment you stop craving, the moment you stop being a slave to your own temptations, you become untouchable. Most men will sell their dignity for pleasure. They will break their discipline for a moment of comfort. They will trade their strength for the easy road, the effortless escape, the temporary fix. And because of this, they will never be respected. But the man who denies himself, who can stand firm against his own temptations, who can walk away from the pleasures that weaken him, he is the one the world bows to. Because he is rare. Because he is strong. Because he has mastered what most men will never master, himself. The Roman soldiers who built an empire lived by discipline. They marched thousands of miles without complaint, trained their bodies until they became weapons, denied themselves comfort so that they could be stronger than their enemies. Their power was not given to them. It was earned through self-control. And this is why they ruled. A man who cannot control his hunger will be led by those who feed him. A man who cannot control his lust will be manipulated by those who tempt him. A man who cannot control his emotions will be broken by those who know how to provoke him. But a man who controls himself, he cannot be bought. He cannot be swayed. He cannot be bent by temptation or manipulated by those who wish to use him. He is a force, and this is why he is respected. Not because he is perfect, not because he is emotionless, but because he is in command of himself when the world is in chaos. Most men will never reach this level. They will remain weak, chasing the same desires that destroy them. They will let their impulses shape their lives instead of shaping their impulses. But the few, the rare few who can master their urges, who can deny themselves today so they can be stronger tomorrow, who can resist what weak men chase blindly, these are the men who rise above the rest. These are the men who lead. These are the men who are respected. And now we approach the final secret. Secret 6. The man who embraces struggle becomes unbreakable. There is a truth that weak men run from, a truth that the average man avoids his entire life. But the few who understand it, the few who accept it, the few who embrace it, these are the men who rise above the rest. The truth is this: suffering is not something to escape, it is something to master. Most men spend their lives avoiding pain, running from discomfort, seeking the easiest path, the softest existence. They want success without hardship, strength without struggle, power without sacrifice. But this is not how the world works. This is not how great men are made. Every man who has ever commanded respect has walked through fire. Every warrior, every emperor, every leader, every thinker who shaped history was forged in the crucible of adversity. They did not become great despite their struggles. They became great because of them. Marcus Aurelius, the last great emperor of Rome, ruled during times of plague, war, and betrayal. His reign was not peaceful, yet he did not curse his fate. Instead, he wrote, "The obstacle is the way." He understood that challenges are not barriers, they are the path itself. They are the test that separates the strong from the weak, the leaders from the followers, the respected from the forgotten. A man who embraces struggle, who does not flee from hardship, who does not curse his fate when things become difficult. This man is rare. And because he is rare, he is respected. Most men break under pressure. They complain, they collapse, they search for an escape. They blame their circumstances, their past, their bad luck. They look at struggle as something unfair, something that should not be happening to them. And in doing so, they reveal their weakness. But the man who stands firm in the face of suffering, the man who welcomes hardship as his teacher, the man who does not seek an easy road but instead sharpens himself against the hardest one, this man becomes something else. This man becomes unbreakable. There is no respect for the man who has had everything handed to him. There is no respect for the man who has never been tested, never been beaten down, never had to fight for what he has. True respect is given to the man who has suffered and kept going, to the man who has been knocked down and stood back up, to the man who carries his scars not as a sign of weakness, but as proof that he survived. The Spartans understood this. From childhood, they were trained to endure pain, to embrace hardship, to see struggle not as something to avoid, but as something that made them stronger. They did not seek comfort, they sought challenge, they sought battle. And because of this, they were feared, they were respected, they were unshakable. A weak man asks for an easier life. A strong man asks for the strength to endure a hard one. And because of this, the strong man commands respect, while the weak man is forgotten. The world will test you. Life will throw obstacles in your path. Pain will find you, no matter how much you try to escape it. But the difference between the respected and the forgotten is simple. Do you run from the fire, or do you walk through it? Because the man who walks through it, the man who refuses to break, the man who embraces suffering as his forge, this man will become something that no force in the world can stop. And this is why he is respected. Because he is rare. Because he is unbreakable. Because he has become the kind of man that others look up to when everything else is falling apart. Most men will never understand this. Most will spend their lives avoiding the very thing that could make them strong. They will search for comfort, and in doing so, they will remain weak. But the few, the rare few, who embrace struggle, who seek out challenges, who do not ask for an easy life but instead forge themselves into men who can withstand anything. These are the men who become legends. These are the men who shape the world. These are the men who are truly respected.